Sushant Singh Rajput. A name that, for so many, evokes a sense of both brilliance and tragedy. He was someone who, imagine this, aced engineering exams, then went on to captivate audiences on the silver screen.
Yeah, a truly remarkable journey. And that's exactly what we're diving deep into today, the life and legacy of Sushant Singh Rajput, and importantly, the recent closure of the investigation surrounding his passing.
Right. We've got a lot to unpack. We have this comprehensive report from the CBI, the Central Bureau of Investigation. They finally wrapped up their investigation just last month, in March 2025, which is more than 4 years after Sushant's death back in June 2020.
Yeah, a long time coming. And we're going to take you through all the key findings and sort of piece together, hopefully, a clearer picture of what happened. We're also going to try to really highlight, who Sushant Singh Rajput was, his accomplishments, his passions. It's easy to get lost in the controversies, so we want to make sure we remember the person behind the headlines.
Absolutely, and that's really the goal of this deep dive, to cut through the noise, look at the facts, and try to understand the significance of it all. For our listeners, we want to make sure you leave with a really solid understanding of what the official findings are, what the media frenzy was all about, and of course, the inspiring story of Sushant's life.
We want to pull out the most crucial bits of information from all this material, connect the dots, and present a clear narrative.
So let's dive right in. Let's start with the end of the investigation. Seems like a major chapter has finally come to a close.
It really has. The CBI, they filed 2 separate closure reports in March, one in Patna, the other in Mumbai Special Courts, and their central finding. After years of investigation and scrutiny, Sushant Singh Rajput's death was a suicide.
And this conclusion wasn't reached lightly, right? They went through a ton of information and relied on different kinds of expertise.
Oh, absolutely. The CBI, they didn't just jump to conclusions. They based their findings on expert opinions from a whole range of fields, forensic science, psychology, you name it.
So they really tried to cover all their bases.
They did. They carefully analyzed the crime scene. They meticulously examined statements from witnesses, all the people connected to the case, and they really leaned on those forensic reports, the scientific evidence. It was a very thorough process.
And something that really stands out to me is that the CBI's assessment wasn't the only one pointing in this direction.
That's right. You had the forensic team from AIIMS-OYIPS, the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. They conducted their own independent review, went through all the evidence as well, and they also definitively ruled out murder.
So you have 2 separate, very credible institutions coming to the same conclusion.
Exactly, and that carries a lot of weight. And both the CBI and AIIMS, they were very clear. There was no evidence, none whatsoever, to suggest that anyone forced or coerced Sushant into taking his own life.
Which directly addresses those initial allegations, the really serious ones, of abetment to suicide.
Right. Because for our listeners who might not be familiar with the legal terms, abetment to suicide means that someone intentionally encouraged or assisted another person in taking their own life. And those allegations were a huge part of the initial narrative, especially with the FIR, the first information report, filed by Sushant's father.
And the CBI explicitly looked into both sides of the story, the allegations made by Sushant's father, and also the counter-complaint filed by Rhea Chakraborty against Sushant's sisters.
Right. They considered all angles, examined every piece of evidence they could find, and in the end, they stated very clearly that they found no substantive material to suggest that anyone drove Sushant to suicide.
So what happens next? CBI has given its verdict. What's the next step in this whole process?
Well, now it goes to the courts. The special courts in Patna and Mumbai, they'll review the closure reports. They have the power to accept the CBI's findings, basically closing the case legally, or they can order further investigation if they think it's necessary. So it's not quite over, but a major step has been taken.
It's been a long road to get to this point. And throughout this entire time, the media coverage surrounding Sushant Singh Rajput's death was, well, there's no other way to put it. It was absolutely intense.
Intense is an understatement. You could even say it was a frenzy. Immediately following his death, it was just nonstop. News channels, social media, everyone was talking about it.
And it wasn't just reporting the facts. There was a lot of speculation, conjecture. It felt like a trial by media was happening.
That's a really good way to put it. It became less about reporting and more about sensationalism. A lot of news outlets, they were pushing all sorts of conspiracy theories, often without any real evidence to back them up, and it created this really toxic environment for everyone involved, especially those close to Sushant.
And one person in particular seemed to bear the brunt of that media scrutiny.
Yeah, Rhea Chakraborty, Sushant's partner at the time. She became the target of what her lawyer called a witch hunt. The accusations, the judgments, it was relentless. Her family, too, they went through a lot.
Some of the theories that were being thrown around were pretty out there, weren't they?
Yeah, some were more believable than others. There were allegations about nepotism in Bollywood, how that might have affected Sushant, and then there were even claims about black magic being involved.
Wow, yeah, that took a pretty dark turn. It all felt very irresponsible.
It did, and it got to a point where even the courts had to step in. The Bombay High Court, they ruled that the media's conduct in this case was contemptuous. They basically said that the media was not upholding the principles of fairness and objectivity, and that was a pretty significant rebuke.
And in addition to all that, Rhea Chakraborty also faced legal challenges outside of the CBI investigation, right?
Right. She was also arrested by the NCB, that's the Narcotics Control Bureau, in a separate drug-related investigation connected to Sushant's death. And she actually spent almost a month, 28 days, in custody because of that.
So it's been a really, really difficult time for her, even beyond the immense public scrutiny. And now, with the CBI closing their investigation, a huge part of this closure is that they have given Rhea Chakraborty a clean chit.
Absolutely. That exoneration is huge. It means they found absolutely no evidence to support the claims that she was in any way responsible for Sushant's death.
And again, this wasn't a snap judgment, right? They really went through the process.
No, yeah, they were thorough. Just like with their overall finding of suicide, they based this decision on the expert opinions, the crime scene analysis, the witness statements, and all those forensic reports. They didn't leave any stone unturned.
And the AIMS report was especially important here, wasn't it?
Yes, it directly addressed some of the wilder accusations that had been circulating. The AIMS experts, they definitively ruled out poisoning or strangulation as possible causes of death. That really helped put to rest some of those more sensational, unfounded theories.
The CBI also looked into that counter-complaint that Rhea Chakraborty had filed against Sushant's sisters.
Yes, they looked into that too. She had alleged that they had given Sushant certain medication based on a fraudulent prescription. But the CBI, after their investigation, said there was no substantial evidence to support those claims either.
So overall, the CBI basically said there was no foul play, no abetment.
Right. Their findings are consistent with what the initial post-mortem exam showed. Even back then, it indicated that the cause of death was asphyxia from hanging, and there were no signs of a struggle, no external injuries, no evidence of foul play.
It really emphasizes the importance of letting official investigations run their course, relying on evidence and due process, rather than getting caught up in the often unfounded claims that circulate in the media and on social media.
Absolutely. It's easy to jump to conclusions, especially in a high-profile case like this, but ultimately we have to trust the process and let the evidence speak for itself.
Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about Sushant Singh Rajput himself, his incredible journey. It's quite remarkable how he went from excelling in the world of engineering to lighting up the silver screen.
It really is. It speaks volumes about his determination, his talent, his willingness to break the mold. He was born in Patna, Bihar, back in 1986, and from a young age, it was clear he was a bright kid, curious about the world. He loved to read, he was fascinated by astrophysics. In fact, he even won the National Olympiad in Physics. Think about that, winning a national-level competition in physics.
That's not your average student.
Not at all. And he kept excelling. He got a great rank, 7th, I believe, in the entrance exam for the Delhi College of Engineering, which is now known as the Delhi Technological University. So he was clearly on a path to a successful career in engineering, a traditional path.
But it seems his heart wasn't really in it.
Yeah, somewhere along the line, he realized that engineering wasn't his true passion. He was drawn to the arts, to performance. And it takes guts to walk away from something you're good at to pursue something uncertain.
It does. So he left engineering and, he just jumped headfirst into the world of acting.
He did. He enrolled in Shamak Davar's dance academy. He joined Barry John's acting classes, two of the most prestigious names in the performing arts world. He even took on background dancing gigs. He appeared in the song sequence for Doom again, and even performed with Aishwarya Rai at the 2006 Commonwealth Games. So he was really getting his hands dirty, learning the craft from the ground up.
He wasn't afraid to start at the bottom.
No, not at all. And then he joined Ekjut, a well-known theater group in Mumbai, run by Nadira Babur. He spent a couple of years there honing his acting skills on stage.
So this is before he became a TV star, before anyone really knew his name.
Exactly. He was doing theater, building his foundation. And then his first professional on-camera appearance was actually in an ad for Nestle Munch back in 2008.
I guess everyone starts somewhere.
Yeah.
And then came the big break into television. How did that happen?
He was discovered, actually, while he was performing on stage. A casting team from Balaji Telefilms saw him and thought he had potential, and that led to his debut role in the TV series Kisdesh Mein Hai Maradil. He played this character named Preet Singh Juneja, and he became so popular that they brought his character back for the finale, even though his storyline had ended earlier.
So he was making a name for himself, but it was Pavitra Rishta that really made him a household name.
Oh yeah, Pavitra Rishta. That was his breakthrough role. He played Manav Deshmukh opposite Ankita Lokhande from 2009 to 2011. It was a huge hit, and he won a bunch of awards for his performance.
I remember that show. He played the ideal son, the perfect husband. The audience loved him.
They did. He was a star. And he didn't just stick to acting. He also showed off his versatility by appearing on some popular dance reality shows like Zara Nach Ke Dikha. He even finished as runner-up on Chalak Dikla Ja 4.
He could dance too. What couldn't he do? And then, at the height of his TV success, he decided to make the jump to Bollywood.
He did in 2011. He left Pavitra Rishta to pursue his dream of becoming a film star. He even had plans to study filmmaking at Stanford. That was the goal. And he got some behind-the-scenes experience working as an assistant director on Roz 2.
So he was really serious about learning all aspects of filmmaking. And then came his official Bollywood debut in 2013 with Kai Poche.
Yes, Kai Poche, directed by Abhishek Kapoor. And it was a huge success, both critically and commercially. Sushant, he played Ishan Putt, and he won the Screen Award for Best Male Debut for his performance.
And that was really just the beginning of his Bollywood journey.
Right. He went on to star in a whole range of films after that. There was Shadazi Romance, where he played a very different kind of character. Then he had a supporting role in PK, a huge blockbuster. He took on the lead role in the mystery thriller Detective Byomkesh Bakshi. And then, of course, came MS Dhoni, The Untold Story.
I think that's the role that a lot of people remember him for, playing MS Dhoni, the iconic Indian cricketer.
It was a defining role for him. The movie was a massive hit, and his performance was critically acclaimed. He got his first Filmfare nomination for Best Actor, and he won the Screen Award for Best Actor Critics' Choice.
He really immersed himself in that role. You could tell he had put in the work to really understand and embody Dhoni.
Oh, absolutely. He trained extensively to get the cricketing style right, the mannerisms, everything. He was completely dedicated to the craft, and he kept working. Even after that, there was Rabda, Kedarnath, Sonchuria, and the very successful Chichor.
And even after his passing, his work continued to touch people's lives.
Yes. His last film, Dil Bechara, which was released posthumously in 2020, was a huge success on streaming platforms. He even got another Filmfare nomination posthumously for Best Actor for that role.
It's sad to think about all the projects he was working on that never got finished.
There were quite a few. Takadum, Chandamama Dorke. He was actually undergoing astronaut training at NASA for that one. He was going to play an astronaut, just goes to show how dedicated he was to his roles. There was also Panini and Rifleman. It's a reminder of all the potential that was lost.
His journey was really inspiring, especially considering his background. He came from a middle-class family. And to achieve what he did in Bollywood, it's no small feat.
No, it's not. His story shows what you can achieve with hard work, dedication, and passion. And he did it all with a smile, always pushing himself further.
And it's inspiring that he pursued acting even though his family wasn't initially supportive, right?
Yeah, it's understandable. They probably had different hopes for him, maybe a more traditional career path after he finished engineering. But he followed his heart, and that takes courage.
And I'm sure he faced his share of struggles, especially in his early days in Mumbai.
Oh, I'm sure he did. It's not an easy industry to break into. There were probably rejections, long days, maybe even some self-doubt, but he persevered.
And it wasn't just the acting. He had so many other interests, intellectual pursuits.
Yeah, he was a real Renaissance man. He had that deep love for science, especially astrophysics and astronomy. There's this famous list he made, My 50 Dreams. It included things like learning to fly a plane, owning a Lamborghini, teaching dance, buying land on the moon, visiting CERN, the list goes on and on.
He even owned a really high-powered telescope.
Yeah, a Meade 14 LX600. He actually brought it on set for Sanchuria, the movie where he played a dacoit. He loved stargazing, exploring the universe. He was a complex guy with so much depth. And it's just incredibly sad that his life ended so abruptly, so tragically.
It is. He passed away on June 14th, 2020, at his home in Mumbai. He was just 34 years old.
Way too young. The official cause of death, as determined by multiple investigations, was suicide by hanging. And it was also reported that he had been battling depression, that he had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
And the initial investigation by the Mumbai police, they also concluded that it was suicide, right?
Yes, they did, and there was no suicide note found. But then his father filed that FIR in Patna, accusing Rhea Chakraborty and others, and that's when things really blew up. The CBI took over the investigation, and the NCB started their own probe into the drug-related allegations.
But ultimately, both the CBI and the AIMS forensic team, they both came to the same conclusion as the Mumbai police.
That's right, they did. They ruled out foul play, they ruled out murder. And the AIMS report also clarified that there was no connection between Sushant's death and death of his former manager, Disha Selian, which had also happened around the same time.
It was a tragic time, and there was so much speculation.
There was, and it's important to remember that while the investigations have concluded, there will always be questions, unanswered questions. But what we do know is that Sushant Singh Rajput left behind a legacy.
He did. He won numerous awards for both his TV and film work, his performances in Pavitra Rishta, Kai Poche, MS Dhoni, The Untold Story, and so many others will continue to be remembered and celebrated.
He touched the lives of so many people, and his talent was undeniable.
And beyond his acting, he was also an inspiration. Someone who followed his dreams, who pushed himself to achieve great things.
He wasn't afraid to take risks, to step outside his comfort zone, to pursue his passions. He lived life to the fullest, and that's something we can all learn from.
So where do we go from here, now that the investigation has officially closed?
Well, I think it's a time for reflection, for remembering Sushant Singh Rajput for who he was, for what he achieved, for the joy he brought to others.
And hopefully, now that the speculation has died down, we can start to focus on that legacy, on celebrating his life, rather than obsessing over his death.
Exactly. The CBI closure, it marks the end of a chapter that was filled with so much pain, so much controversy, and it allows us to move forward to remember Sushant for his incredible talent, his infectious energy, his boundless curiosity.
And it's important to note that there have been reactions from both sides, from Rhea Chakraborty's lawyer and brother, who have expressed relief and vindication, and also from Sushant's father, who has previously voiced his dissatisfaction with certain aspects of the investigation.
Right, and those different reactions just highlight how complex this whole situation was, how much it affected everyone involved. There's no easy answer, no simple resolution that can satisfy everyone.
But the truth, as determined by the CBI, is out there. And it allows us to start to shift the narrative, to focus on what truly matters.
And for our listeners, I think it's important to reflect on the broader implications of this case. It raises questions about the role of the media, the responsibility we all have when it comes to sharing information, and the importance of empathy and understanding, especially in the face of tragedy.
Absolutely. This deep dive, it wasn't just about unpacking the facts of a case, it was about understanding a person, a life, and the impact that one person can have on the world.
Sushant Singh Rajput, he was an engineer, an actor, a dancer, a dreamer, and so much more. He was a reminder that life is precious, that we should pursue our passions, and that we should treat each other with kindness and respect. And I think that's the most important takeaway of all.
Well said. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking. And as always, we encourage you to continue exploring, to keep asking questions, and to never stop learning.
And to always remember the human being behind the headlines.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks again, everyone.
You're welcome.